I literally sent out a query yesterday. 14 minutes later, I got like a
Ugh.
rejection. Like they want a query letter and then they want your first 25 pages. And I was just like, okay, well, either my pages are really horrible that you don't even read all of the pages because I feel you can't read that many pages in 14 minutes.
Yeah, that's either a query rejection or like first page.
Yeah, because you do put your query first in the body of the email.
I don't know which query it is, but maybe review it. Or maybe that person is just like, I have too many of these.
So it's like one of those like, we don't feel you're a fit for our list right now.
So it really gives
Thanks.
you no idea.
Exactly. Exactly.
So today I have the coolest thing. You remember I had my black mug. I think I made a Facebook post about it. And the cat knocked it off the table and broke it.
Mm-hmm.
My dear husband made me this mug. It's got my cat's face on one side. And that mug said, Maker's gonna make. And on this one it says, you make, I break.
That is adorable. That is very cute.
Isn't
That is
great?
very cute. Though I'm wondering now, I'm like, did you on purpose put his face on it so that he won't push himself off?
That's the hope. I mean, he might though. For having one eye, this cat does not slow down.
So I'm drinking my masala tea today. Yummy, yummy.
I just have apple cider, something to keep my throat clear.
We all need that sometimes, especially when you go into the winter. Are we ready for this episode?
We are ready.
Hey ho, let's go! Welcome to Tea and Tales. We are so happy to have you here with us. I'm Madeline I Now.
And I'm Sarah Sampson. We especially want to thank Anna Hong and Christina Letizia. Today, we are going to have a masterclass on writing close third person with Gayvin Powers. Please welcome Gayvin.
Oh my goodness, Gayvin, I am so super excited about this episode because I was talking to our mutual friend, Claire, and she was talking about how kind you were to give her like a little mini masterclass session on what third person is. So I'm very excited.
Excellent. Yeah, it's a huge beast. So I'm more than happy to share what I know and what I've learned. We'll get there.
Well, Gayvin, let's talk a little bit about who you are first. You have a very rich background.
I have lots of different things that all kind of come together and meld into this being that I am. I'm a published author, an award-winning screenwriter, and I specialize in adaptations and forgotten women in history.
That podcast just launched this January, didn't it?
January 6th, 2026. And I have a special guest that I interviewed this summer, Carolyn Jane Knight, who's the fifth great-granddaughter of Jane Austen. 2025 is the 250th anniversary of Jane Austen's birthday. So celebrations have been going on all year, and I got to interview her for a magazine that I write for in South Park. And so I asked her if she wanted to do just a special pre-launch, which is going to be on Jane's 250th birthday on December 16th, 2025. So I went to graduate school specifically wanting to learn how to do third person interiority, because right now I really love writing in historical fiction. I love reading historical fiction. And that genre doesn't go to first person, it goes to third person. And all of my experience is writing in first person or writing articles where it's very removed. And so it's different writing in first person and third person. And I'm going to give all of you like some little tricks and tools that I have in my little tool bag to help me. I started studying this 6 years ago and I still struggle with it. Even though I went to grad school to get this information, I understood it sort of in general and I could apply it to a certain degree, but it wasn't coming out in my writing. So last year I started working with Brenda Copeland, who we all love. She's so amazing, right? She used to be the senior editor at St. Martin's Press. She is so knowledgeable and kind and just gets right to it. And so she's really helped me hone in that third person. And then while working with her, I noticed that sometimes I'll have like some summaries sections. Do you all know what I'm talking about? When all of a sudden you're writing and you're not quite sure where you're going, but you'll summarize something. Every time I see that in my writing, I go, oh, hey, this is a part where I need to get closer. I will then go into first person because first person is natural for me. Third person, I feel too distant writing third person. I'm too far away from the interiority of the character. I started off as an actress and I started writing because I didn't like any of the stories that were being out there for me and my friends. So I was like, I'm going to write some stories for us. Whoa, this is what happens. So be careful what you wish for. It could be a lifelong journey.
I absolutely love that, how your drive was, I need something better. I feel like the
Right.
best novels and the freshest stuff comes out of that thought.
I saw the amount of writing that was available for young women my age and the kind of writing and the depth, and I was like, this is what I'm wanting? Are you kidding me? There's like no substance in here. I got to be able to do something better. But that's what I go to, is first person, because I like to try on the characters. That's the actor side of me, where I'm like, oh, I want to try this character, and what's she feeling, or what's he feeling, or what's the motivation. If I'm really stuck and I'm like, gosh, this chapter is really removed and I'm just not getting there, I'll rewrite it all in first person, and then I'll go back in and I'll translate it into third person. And then it's on the page.
That is so interesting. Though I do feel like you are making your work like double the amount. Because I started writing a novel, and for whatever reason, I decided to write in third person. And so I was about like 20,000 words in, and then I let it sit for a while, and I started doing a different novel, which was in first person. And I was like, okay, I should probably finish this one. I had to rewrite 20,000 words of third person back into first person again. I was just like, that was tedious. I love the way you approach it though, but I'm like, that sounds like a lot of work.
That's why I don't do the whole thing and then translate it. I really just save it for those special occasions where I'm looking at a chapter, or I'm looking at a specific paragraph or a scene. And it's almost like I feel an internal resistance within me. It's almost like the narrative lens, the psychic lens that I have, just can't quite get close enough. But the moment I shift and I go, okay, I'm just going to try this character on for a second, all of a sudden the dialogue's there, the emotions are there, and then it's not so distant. It helps me a ton. When you do third person, you can do omniscient, which was a style that was very popular several years ago, or you can do close third, which has limited view. But the nice thing about close third with limited view, the narrator can play a little bit more than you can if you're in first person. So first person, when you write it, you can write a character and you can have a really unreliable narrator, and you may not know it until the very end, or you may not know that this was an unreliable narrator, and you kind of look back and go, oh my gosh, I actually think that was an unreliable narrator. Well, you can play with that in third person, because you not only can go into your main character, you also have the narrator, which is you, and you can like leave little hints that maybe this person is not necessarily reliable. Like I have a character right now, she's what I would consider a narcissist. Like, this is in the late 1800s. They didn't call them that back then, but she had some good qualities too. So I'm trying to bring out all different sides. But if I wrote her just in first person, you might go through the whole book and never realize that sort of some of this delusions of grandeur that she has, and like how she's kind of off on a few little things. But having it in third person, you can play with it a little bit more and lay a few other like tiny little hints of what's really going on.
That's what I really love writing in third person for, is the fact that my reader can have more information than the character does. And when they understand something and know that the character doesn't, it can add this sense of tension. That's really, really neat. I get this question a lot on forums where they're like, what do you mean close third person? I love how you told us, there's omniscience and then there's close third person, and it's kind of like a sliding scale of up and down of how much of the character versus narrator you're getting. So how much would you say you need to stay in that super close third person versus being a little bit more distant for the narrator?
That is like a whole afternoon conversation, because that is a fabulous question. I saw one of the videos I watched that was so helpful. There's a gal on Readsy, and she talks about the 5 different levels of close third. And so when you're in close third, you can go distant to very, 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 very close, where it's just the thoughts are immediate. So the first sentence might be, you walked down the street, it was raining. So that's very distant, because you're out here. Like if you have a camera, you're way out here and you're kind of looking at him out here walking down the street and it's raining. But as you come in, the camera gets closer, and think of like an extreme close up. The closest you can get is like when you see a film and you're looking on screen and you just see a character's eye or maybe their mouth or something. You're getting super, super close. And you could mention something about how cold it was running down the side of his mouth. You kind of you use a little bit of that interiority to get a little bit closer. So that's where interiority comes in. So whereas when you're starting at the top level, the fifth level of third person, you're just observing what's going on. And as you get closer and closer and closer, you're getting deeper into the person's mind as if you're in there with their subtext and their feeling. And there is no distance between what's happening to that person, as if you were in first person, but you're writing it in third, and they're experiencing the emotions, the feelings, and it's just right there. It could be an exclamation, damn, it had to rain. That would be close, close, because you're there with the character.
You sent us some writing examples, and you're dancing with the book. Oh, I love it. I love it.
So this is Maggie O'Farrell. This is the marriage portrait. And I can't get enough of this book. This is a historical fiction. I also brought the sirens because I know some friends of mine like fantasy. Here's Maggie O'Farrell. And what I love about this is she literally took an obscure woman, Lucrezia. It's the 16th century. And what's fabulous about this is it's close third. And so we have limited views, but Maggie is such a master as she does this, showing us with what Lucrezia observes, what's important. And she does it pacing wise so expertly that it's just chilling. A wild and lonely place. This is set in 1561. Lucrezia is taking her seat at the long dining table, which is polished to a watery gleam and spread with dishes, inverted cups, a woven circlet of fur. Her husband is sitting down, not in his customary place at the opposite end, but next to her, close enough that she could rest her head on his shoulder, should she wish. He is unfolding his napkin and straightening a knife, and moving the candle towards them both when it comes to her with particular clarity, as if some colored glass had been put in front of her eyes, or perhaps removed from them, that he intends to kill her.
Ooh.
Isn't that so good?
Maybe you can like expound on this, but what I'm seeing here is we've started very like in that zoomed out lens that we were just talking about. She's taking a seat, they're doing this, and then each sentence is taking us closer and closer until you are right in her eyes and like he's going to kill her, and it's like whoa. And I feel like I was drawn into her and her perspective.
Right? And see, that's what third person can do when it's done really well. I'm so happy that you saw that, because you're right. If you're looking at a film, you're like far away, you're checking it out. Here's where we are. But you know what? The thing is with writing, it's not so much always what you mention, but what you don't mention. The dishes are there, the inverted cups. There's no food on the table. Usually it's a feast and there's food, which would be warm and inviting. Instead, it's spread with dishes and inverted cups. So nobody's celebrating. This already feels kind of off kilter. Like, what's going on here? So her husband is sitting down, not in his customary place at the end, but next to her. So there's something different already. As I'm reading that, I'm wondering, does she want to rest her head on his shoulder? Like, why is he here next to her? What's going on? And she's so hyper-focused on him. Why is he on straightening the knife? We don't have food. There's nothing warm. Candles aren't lit. People aren't laughing. And this is what the main character is noticing. She's not noticing the servants that might be in the background bringing food or what have you. She's noticing that he's touching a knife. This is kind of how you can get into that first person experience while still being in third person. It's telling you like everything's shifting. This lens is shifting, or it's been removed from her. And she realizes, her intuition tells her he intends to kill her.
It actually reminds me of, have you, either of you, ever had, it's like a little toy that almost looks like a telescope, and then when you put it in front of you and you twist it, it like either does like different colors, or it can do like different pictures and
Kaleidoscope.
stuff like that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so that's kind of what that reminded me of. Yeah, like the more you twist it, the more intense the POV sighting gets.
Yes. Yes.
Let's go ahead and go into the next one. You said The Librarian of Burned Books, a novel.
And I haven't read this book, the whole book, but I read the beginning. She isn't quite in it as much as Maggie O'Farrell, but she is very close. So we've got New York City, May 1944, Viv pressed her spine against the brick wall of the alley as she split her attention between the back door of the ritziest steakhouse in Manhattan and the curious rat that was getting bolder by the second. Fabulous setup, because you've got this ritzy high-end steakhouse in Manhattan, and then what's going on in society, a rat that's getting bold. In Viv's mind, this escapade had played out with less garbage and more intrigue, and she was starting to wonder if her plan was fundamentally flawed. As she pondered the possibility of retreat, the dishwasher she'd been waiting to bribe finally appeared. Her head went a little light in equal parts excitement and terror as she slipped the boy the bill she'd folded up just so. The stench of day-old cabbage receded once she stepped into the restaurant's kitchen. Her confidence returning, Viv donned the femme fatale persona she'd been channeling all morning in preparation for this wild scheme. All this does in here is this is setting up, because she's going to go meet a man that has a lot of power. He is controlling the ability for her to get books out to the soldiers that are fighting the war right now. She's doing all this stuff to draw attention, and she's wants to go and call him on the carpet about what's been going on. You can see, like with this, we have a lot more setup going on than we did in Maggie O'Farrell. If I gave you other pages, if you read further, the author does a really great job of where the scene is set versus setting up the conflict.
I love how even though she's setting the scene, where the last one, she had set the scene in a very distant, like, this is that and this is that. Here, we're very close in the setup. We're feeling the stockings on the back of her leg. We're understanding, oh, she doesn't normally do this. That's her thoughts. We're into her thoughts. We're into her interiority. And so even though we're in third person seeing a lot of it, the wording itself, I feel like, is drawn in close to her feelings about what we're seeing, not just seeing this scene.
That's when interiority is done really, really well. The author has set us in this place, in Viv's mind, what's happening, and Viv is very methodical about what she's doing. She's very careful. Everything, you can get a very strong sense that everything is planned here. She even says this escapade played out with less garbage and more intrigue. And then she's starting to wonder if her plan was fundamentally flawed. So this is all interiority, and this sort of ups the ante and the stakes. And then you're wondering, well, at least I'm wondering, why is she there and why is she doing this?
And I think if we compare like the first line here to the first line of the last book, Viv pressed her spine against the brick wall. We are feeling her spine against the brick wall. We're not just being told. Where in the other one is Lucrezia is taking her seat. That is one of the most telling things I have ever heard. Lizzie is taking her seat at a long dining table. And so both of them are third person, but the one is so much closer than the other. And just the way that you can switch the words around and use the different styles to create the feeling you want.
Everyone has a different voice. Everyone has a different style. And so when people are writing, whether it's third person or first person, you're going to get into whatever flow and closeness works best for you, and whatever works best for the book that you're writing, because maybe you need to be closer for one book and further away with another, but you're going to develop that, and that's going to come to you, and it starts becoming part of the texture and the voice and the pacing, everything that's part of that book and that story that you're writing, which is really cool. And I love that you brought it up, Sarah, about how this one is much closer. It is. We are with her already. We're already in her head. And the only time we hear about Lucrezia, what's going on in her head, is she realizes that he's going to kill her. She's so disconnected with herself. She's seen everything that's going on, and then, oh, he's going to kill me, is what she thinks. That in and of itself tells you that she's on edge, because she's not totally present in her own body. This other gal, Viv, is present in her own body.
By whom is The Sirens?
This is by Amelia Hart, and her writing is just lovely. We started off more distant, and with every example, we've gotten a little bit closer. But in the prologue, it says, she breathes in with the sea, in. The waves crash against the rocks, frothing through the mouth of the cave. So, like, these are things that are happening. Like, it's so slow. The time is so slowed down, and she's noticing all these things are happening just between an inhale, which is just incredible. So then we go to the first chapter over here of the Sirens, and it's Monday, February 11th, 2019 in Australia. And the first line is just fabulous. It's the scream that wakes her. The room smells of must and sleep. She can feel the rapid beat of a pulse, the tender chords of a throat. Fingernails rake at her hands. A gray dawn filters through the slats in the blinds, and in its light, Lucy sees Ben below, his eyes bright with fear. A blood vessel has burst in his left sclera, forming a red scar. She stumbles back from the bed. "Lucy," he sputters, one hand clawing at his neck. "What the—" The words choke out of him, his voice strangled. Strangled. Her hands on his neck, the bulge of his eyes. She's been strangling him. So the thing that's so fabulous about this is we are right in it. So if we wanted that to be first person, so here's an example. If we want to do an exercise right now, is to turn this then into first person.
As if I haven't done that for 20,000 words, but sure, let's do this into first person.
Nell, you are the expert here. It's the scream that wakes me. The room smells of must and sleep. I feel the rapid beat of a pulse, the tender chords of a throat. Fingernails rake my hands. A gray dawn filters through the slats and the blinds, and in its light, I see Ben below me. So it's just, this one was probably easier than a lot of other ones that I'm sure, Nell, you and I have had to translate back and forth because I only changed I and me. But it does get a little persnickety every now and then because there's some sentences that just read better in first person, and it's hard to get the same in third person. But like I said, you get to kind of play back and forth with those.
I do find it interesting when you do write third person because in third person, it almost gives you permission to view yourself more descriptively than you would when you are in first person, because you won't be saying to yourself in the first person, I have purple hair, you just have hair. Whereas in third person, you could be like, the purple hair cascades from her shoulder or something like that. I think it makes it easier in third person to describe stuff than in first person, because you have to get really creative in first person to like, I have purple hair, but I'm not telling you I have purple hair. How am I going to show you?
Right. And how many times can you look in a mirror or see a reflection or something like that? It does. It makes it very challenging to come up with ways to convey how you're seen to others when everything's in one person's viewpoint.
What I do like about this piece from the other two that we have done is the fact that, in writing, we are told to use our five senses. And this one definitely like just hits your senses like wham, bam, left, right. It immediately kind of puts you like in the center of the action also.
I love how Amelia Hart has just reversed the expectations. So it's the scream that wakes her. We think something's happening to her. At least that's what happens in my mind. I think something's wrong with, like, someone's attacking her, something's happening, there's danger for her. And then we find out, no, she's actually been strangling someone in her sleep and not realized it, which is a great reversal and terrible if you're her bedmate.
One of the questions I do have, and I think was Claire mentioned it when she was looking at one of my pages, is that when you write in third person and you do inner voice, she mentioned something in the sense that you get different types of inner voice that you can write when you are in third person. So I would love like just a little bit of explanation on that, and kind of like the different types that you get, and how do you know, I almost want to say, which type you should use, and what is like the smartest type to use versus the lazy type.
The smartest one to use is whatever is working best in your story and helping your character most in that moment. When you're in your character's head and you have those interiority voices, you can have exclamations. You could literally have what a character is thinking, that internal dialogue that we all have, but you have to use it really sparingly, because what happens sometimes when you use that is it can punctuate something, but it can also take the reader out of being close in there with the emotions. So you have to be kind of careful how you use that. You can do just like a word of interiority that could just blow, the lid off of the story. That could be coming from the narrator that's sort of helping bridge between the narrator and the main character. Then what you can do is you can expand, how Brenda talks about amplification, and you can use all this interiority to help give deeper meaning and give those emotional punches that really illustrate a sentence that you've said. So I know both of you had asked about, when is the best time to really get close? And the interiority is really best used when you're hitting an emotional moment and you need the reader to feel the depth of what your character is feeling. The other place where you can look through your pages and see if you need to add a little bit more to get closer, and getting closer is using the interiority. It's using the amplification. When you see a line that you write and you go, oh man, I really like that line, you're like, I just landed that punch, like I just went boom with it. What does that boom mean? What does that punch mean? Why does that land so hard? Why is that such a great one-liner? Now expand.
Okay, so this is then probably more like a formatting question, because how I learned inner thought, how it's supposed to be written, is when you are in third person and you want to do an inner thought, it's usually in italics, and then it's in first person and it's in present tense. Whereas a lot of times your third person is in past tense. And so that is how, in one way, the reader can immediately know that you are moving into the inner thought of the
Right.
character. But then, as I shared my pages with Claire, she was like, well, you don't need that because it kind of takes you out of the story. And so instead of doing a first person in present tense, you keep it in the past tense and you keep it third person. It's just the wording of your sentence that's different. So, can you vary between those two or three different types of like formatting, or should you kind of stick to one throughout your entire novel?
Well, this is like the question that all writers are asking. So, Nell, you're probably answering about 99% of the people listening's question right now. This is a hard answer, and I'll say that because working with Brenda's like, no italics, no italics. Now, that said, she's seen probably like 100 pages of my 400-page book, and she's allowed me 3 words with italics. And she said, you can put this in here because it gives emphasis, but anytime there's internal thought, anything like that, she goes, no italics for you. Now, I have heard other people say, but I see it all the time in, this genre where they do italics. And I'm like, I can't speak on that because I'm writing historical fiction. I'm working with Brenda and I know what she shared with me. So I don't want to lead you astray with that. This is my observation. I think some people have a certain style and they've been doing it for a while and they've been published for a while and they just keep doing that style and their readers expect it. And then I think the key thing is to figure out in your genre, what is expected for your genre, and then stick with that. Especially if you haven't been traditionally published before, I would stick with whatever the current trend is in your genre because it's always changing and you want to be current for whatever. Then once you get published and you have your following and they're like, oh, we love Nell, she's amazing, then you can stick with that. My advice to everyone is, and this is for myself as well, I know the rules that I need to play for my genre. Once I'm in, I might play a little bit more once I have my following. But we want to make sure we get past the gatekeepers.
And that's why it is important to read as a writer, because you have to be updated and keep up with the trends that is doing the rounds.
Exactly. Yeah.
And as a writer who started my journey using a lot of italics, I understand the love for italics, especially in fantasy. We love our italics in fantasy. And doing a lot of the kind of close interior thoughts that are switched into first person and put into italics. I used to do that a lot. I learned from a couple different editors who hit that hard during one of my early years. I went, okay, I need to figure out how to switch this back into third person and figure out when it's good to have that first person thought in the italics for that emphasis. When I've changed those thoughts into third person, it's interesting how they keep that super, super closeness in that third person thought that flows with the story.
I love what you just said, Sarah, because it's reminding me of when I did do my thesis. I did study George R. R. Martin's The Song of Fire and Ice, his first book. And so I broke it down. I think I just did close on that one. I don't remember if it was third person or first person he wrote in. I remember one distinct time that he had one word italicized, and that's when he went to go visit his sister at her gravesite. And I was like, okay, he wants me to pay attention to this. This is important. The way I saw him use it and the way I'm seeing it, that I'm able to get away with it in my work right now, is it's only coming in for something so incredibly deep from a wounded place, and it's like one or two words, and that's it.
So, Gayvin, I have just one more question for you. When we are writing third person and we feel like we can't get into that close interiority, are there key words or phrases that might happen regularly where we are backing off on that interiority, but we need to be leaning into it, that a writer can look through their manuscript and go, ah, there, that's a problem right there?
Anytime you notice that you're using filter words, and sometimes I've noticed that we can get away with a feel here or a feel there, but anytime you're noticing that you're doing filter words, it's a great time to say, hey, I need to get closer. Anytime that you've noticed that you've paraphrased some information, and maybe you do need to kind of paraphrase and give a little bit of background, but recalling it from your character's POV, and putting it through that character's POV to recall what had happened, to sort of bring the reader up to date, you can get closer to do that sort of summary and bring in a little bit of interiority to summarize that without doing a traditional summary that feels like an info dump.
Okay, so I actually want to piggyback off of that question and answer because I sometimes feel it's a lot easier to info dump in third person than it would be in first person. And so when you find yourself in a little swimming pool of info dump, how would you zoom in rather than zoom out? Because I also feel like when you move out and you have a narrative view of something, it is more telling. Whereas when you zoom in, it does show a little bit more.
Literally just went over this because I had a massive set piece in the middle of my story that's basically changes everyone's relationship with my main character. And three major huge beats happen within about 30 pages. I would say my big takeaway in going through that was, don't be afraid to take your time. Like, because I know we want to hit all those beats and keep it going and everything else. And I mean, I used to be this flowery writer that you said write 5 pages and I'd write 10. And now they're like, write 5. And I'm like, okay, I've got 4.9 pages here just for you. There you go. And so I'm so tight with everything. Now I have to amplify a lot more and fill things in a lot more. And so it's been an interesting challenge. So I would say, don't be afraid to slow down and take those moments where you need to breathe into the space. When there's something emotional going on, it's like when a human being has a emotional experience, for as much as our hearts race and everything else, time kind of slows down. You notice like the beat of water on the inside of your window and how it's running down, and how that you didn't notice that there was a little bit of, of dust and it was catching the light. You get a little bit more granular in those moments, but the way to keep it from being an info dump is to again get closer and to go into the character's mind and take everything in with, okay, well, I'm seeing this outside, but how is that making my character feel? Everything that's external, how does it get filtered through my main character? That's the main thing I'm putting on the page because it affects my character. And now it brings my reader in deeper because my reader goes, oh, okay, I understand this character a little bit better now.
And I love that advice, especially because fantasy writers tend to do that a lot, where we will put in all the grand world building that we've done. You made a cool statue and you want everybody to see it, but is that statue important to the storyline and to your character? If not, it needs to stay out. And it's kind of the same idea. Is this interiority or is this just detail? So I love that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Gayvin, and giving us so many things to think about and go back to our novels to edit.
Anytime you want to meet up and then we all change our 20,000 words from one person to another, let me know. We'll have a writing sprint and see who finishes first. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this.
We like to keep things short here on Tea and Tales. Get your fingers back on the keyboard and your pens back on paper.
And if you love what we are doing here, if you love the topics that we are discussing and the guests that we have on, go follow us on Instagram, Threads, and Facebook at Tea and Tales Podcast, and on Twitter/X and TikTok at Podcast Details. And go to that purple icon on your device and go give us 5 stars so that you can help us go up, up, up at some moment.
Happy writing.
Bye!